here we go. Thanks for joining us for today's virtual workshop, presented, of course, by Bohr Insurance Group. You have Derek and me, Brian, here kind of leading the charge, but we do have the majority of our team also on the call with us. So as a group entirely, we certainly appreciate you being with us and sharing some of your Thursday lunch hour with us. Today's workshop is going to be focused on two things: auto insurance claims and umbrella insurance policies. Our workshop scheduled for next month, March, is going to talk about rental car coverage and then also about the difference between replacement cost or reconstruction cost and market value. Obviously, that's specific to home insurance, whereas the rental car coverage piece is focused on auto insurance. Yes, it's not a coincidence that we scheduled that workshop for March when most of us hope that we're going away somewhere warm, likely renting a vehicle while we are gone. So that's a very common question that we field from clients and others, and we want to provide some more input on that in a timely manner. Now, for today's agenda, part one, like I said, we're going to touch on auto insurance claims. Specifically, when can I make a claim against another driver? Doesn't seem like I should be able to do that in Michigan, given we are a no-fault state. Derek's going to shed some light on that for us. Part two, an umbrella policy. Do I need one? What does it do? What's the point of it? Is it ever going to come into play? So we're going to start first with part one, auto insurance claims and making a claim against another driver. There's our visual there of a typical rear-ending accident. Hopefully no one was injured, but you've got some damage to a couple of vehicles. Now, Derek, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I've only been doing this for a couple of years now, but we've got enough experience under our belt to know Michigan is a no-fault state, right?
Right, it is. And as you know, no fault typically means that someone can't go after another driver when that other driver causes damage to their vehicle, even when the other driver was at fault in the accident. The general rule, as you'll see on this slide, is you can't file a claim against another driver. Instead, you go back to your own auto insurance policy, make a collision claim, and your own insurance company pays for the repairs to your vehicle.
I heard that Michigan got rid of no fault last year with the new auto insurance law. Did that change how this works from a collision standpoint?
It didn't change it much. The reform that took place was primarily with regard to the personal injury protection coverage, which is the medical component of an auto insurance policy. The collision aspect did not change, but you'll see here in a couple slides that there was a slight tweak to the dollar threshold when it comes to these certain exceptions that we're going to talk about here.
Interesting. Okay, so when I see a car accident, or I'm unfortunately involved in a car accident, the coverage that I have for my vehicle, my collision coverage, is what's going to be in the ball game for me making a claim for the repairs to my vehicle, correct?
That's right. And you're probably familiar with the phrase PLPD insurance. A lot of people use that for an older vehicle that doesn't have a ton of value. Someone that has PLPD coverage is driving around saying, I'm okay with damage to this vehicle. I don't want to file a collision claim on my policy to have it repaired.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Now, I've heard that PLPD coverage maybe became a little bit more appropriate in some situations because of our new auto insurance law, but we just said that there really wasn't much of a change. You mentioned there was a change from a dollar threshold standpoint. Tell us what that exception is to Michigan's no-fault law about collision coverage and why it's a little bit more beneficial under the new law if I'm one of those drivers that chose PLPD coverage for my own vehicle.
Yeah, sure. So just to touch on the general rule again, the general rule is that you cannot go after the driver that caused the accident for the damage to your vehicle. However, to provide some job security for us insurance agents, they of course made it a little bit more complicated and threw an exception in there. And that exception says you can go after the driver that caused the accident for up to $3,000. That only applies if you don't have collision coverage on your own vehicle, so what we usually refer to as PLPD, or you have collision coverage but you have to pay a deductible. So
Interesting.
in the past, it was $1,000. Today, it's $3,000. So someone that has had PLPD on their vehicle for the last 10 years, well, under our new auto insurance laws, they like this because when someone else causes that car accident, they can go after that other driver for $3,000 instead of $1,000 like they could previously.
Interesting. And especially with what we're seeing, used car values, the movement we're seeing there, it's nice to know that you could potentially recover $3,000 instead of only $1,000. Now, like you said, the first part would be you don't have collision coverage. Like you said, that's a vehicle with PLPD. Or part two, you do have collision coverage, but you have to pay a deductible. So you have out-of-pocket costs on the collision claim that you are making on your own policy. In our example here, you'll see a vehicle that has full coverage, comprehensive coverage with a $100 deductible, and then collision coverage, which has a $250 deductible. So in this situation, if this is my vehicle and my policy, I'm involved in a car accident, it wasn't my fault, someone rear-ended me on the highway, I would make a collision claim on my own policy. I would have to pay $250 out of pocket. That's my deductible. But then I could go after the at-fault driver to try to recover my $250 deductible. Correct?
Exactly. And let's say you didn't have collision coverage and you had to pay out of pocket for the repairs to your vehicle. You could go after them for the cost of those repairs up to $3,000.
Okay, so if I have $5,000 of damage, the most I can get is $3,000. If I have $2,200 of damage, the most I can get is $2,200.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, thanks for that. Now, how do I do that? It sounds complicated. If I'm trying to make a claim against someone else and their insurance policy, what do I need to know if I'm someone who is involved in a car accident, especially if it's not my fault? What should I do at the scene there?
Yeah. Get as much information as possible. It doesn't hurt to have every single detail available to you as you go through the process of trying to recover that deductible or the cost of the repairs. The biggest thing that I would advise clients to do is to make sure they file a police report. Now, if the accident happened on private property, maybe in the Myers parking lot, the police probably are not going to come and file the report on your behalf, but you still want to call the police station and have a report filed. It's called a self-reporting of a traffic crash, and that's going to help substantiate what happened. So always call the cops. If they'll come to the scene, great. If they won't, still file a police report. Take photos of your vehicle, the other vehicle, and also get the other driver's license number, their driver's license number, and their insurance information. The easiest thing to do is to simply snap a photo of their driver's license and their proof of insurance. That's going to really, really help when it comes to trying to go after that other driver for those out-of-pocket costs. Obviously, get their contact information. Part of this thing is, that other party being willing to play ball here. So you don't want to come off as overly hostile. You don't want to throw out any crazy demands. You want to make sure you stay in that person's good graces, because the more they cooperate with this process, the easier it's going to be. So obtain as much information as possible at the scene of the accident and always call the cops. Next, get you a repair estimate for your vehicle, because that's going to be used to substantiate the claim that you're going to make against the other driver. As Brian mentioned previously, that's limited to $3,000 or your deductible. So the other party or their insurance company is always going to ask for a repair estimate to know what's the amount that we actually owe for this thing. Next, follow up. Call the insurance company, call the other driver, continue to push this thing forward until you finally recover that deductible or the cost of your repairs. It's oftentimes a long process, a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months, but be persistent and keep at it. And in most instances, you're actually going to recover what you paid out of pocket.
Sure. And it sounds like a more complicated process than it maybe is. I think the key point being get as much information as you can. Working with an agency like ours, of course, we are there to do it with you. So we're helping file that claim with the other insurance company. We're describing what happened to them. Oftentimes, it might be an insurance company that takes those claim calls in Tennessee or in California. They have no idea how the law works here in Michigan. So it's our job to educate them about what happened and what does Michigan's law say that they owe to you or our client. So we're happy to help walk through that process. But once you leave the scene of the accident, it becomes very challenging to obtain the necessary information if it wasn't obtained at the scene. So that's the key takeaway here, correct, Dee?
Exactly.
Okay, great, thanks. Now, we're going to breeze over this because we want to make sure we get into part two here. If the other driver doesn't have insurance, it becomes a little bit more challenging of a process to try to recover this $3,000. We have successfully done it, but when there's not an insurance company paying that $3,000 for that other party, I've had situations where we've had to go $500 at a time. We've collected $500 every quarter up until we've collected that $3,000. Now, sometimes that other person says pound sand. They don't have 15 bucks in their checking account. They're never going to have $3,000 to pay you back. That's an unfortunate situation. It's a matter of how much energy are we going to spend here trying to get this out of them. And then the second piece here, what if I caused the accident? I don't want to pay $3,000 to somebody else. Well, your auto insurance policy likely is going to have this coverage called special tort liability. You'll see the limit there is $3,000. That's going to pay that piece on your behalf. It would certainly be no fun to pay your own deductible in a claim and pay $3,000 to somebody else in that same claim. Almost every one of our clients is going to have this coverage in their auto insurance policy, which is going to pay that on your behalf. Expert tip here, Dee, like you said, in some instances, you can recover something from the other driver, especially if you have PLPD coverage or you have a deductible that you need to pay. What do you think? Jump into part two?
Let's keep it rolling.
All right, part two. Umbrella insurance. Do I need an umbrella policy? First, Derek, what is an umbrella policy? Is it applying to physical assets? Is it my auto insurance? Is it my home insurance? What is it doing?
Yeah, so it's a separate policy in most cases, and it's a liability policy. So you'll see in this slide here, it's not insuring damage to a vehicle or a house or a boat or a wedding ring or anything like that. It's simply for liability purposes. You were sued and that lawsuit against you exceeds the amount of coverage you have on your auto or your homeowner's policies. And you're therefore going to be paying part of that lawsuit out of pocket. The umbrella policy steps in to provide additional coverage for that lawsuit. So hopefully that entire lawsuit against you is covered by your insurance and you don't end up paying out of pocket for any portion of it.
Okay, so if my house burns down or a tree falls on my car, that has nothing to do with my umbrella policy. But if someone is injured because I own those things, that is going to have to do with my umbrella policy. Is that right?
That's exactly right. So as you can imagine, the people that are primarily concerned about an umbrella policy or interested in it, they're the people that own the fun toys. You know, they own the jet ski, the golf cart, the dirt bike, they own the pool, swing set, trampoline, those types of things. And we'll also touch on a little bit later in this presentation, other people that are interested in an umbrella policy, even though they might not have all those fun things to expose themselves to a lawsuit.
Okay. Now, not to beat a dead horse by any means, but again, isn't Michigan a no-fault state? I don't understand how I could be sued for something if we have a no-fault law in effect here in Michigan.
Yeah. So you'll see here, yes, we do have a no-fault state, but just like we had talked about before, there was an exception for damage to a vehicle. There's also an exception for certain lawsuits. Here in Michigan, if you hurt someone in a car accident, they can sue you for their lost income, and they can sue you for a decrease in the quality of their life. Maybe they lost vision in one of their eyes or they're paralyzed from the waist down. A judge is obviously going to award a pretty sizable lawsuit in those instances.
But at least I can't be sued for their medical expenses, right? Because Michigan has always had a no-fault system for medical coverage. Is that right?
That was true until July of 2020. Now,
See how I
you
set you up
can
for that one?
that was perfect. That was a nice lob to me. And I say lob as if I'm going up and making a slam
Slamming
dunk
home.
or
Yeah,
something
sure.
at 5'9". I don't think so. But the uncovered medical expenses are now something that is included in lawsuits. So there is an additional exposure for everybody here in Michigan, even if someone kept their insurance the same as it's been in the past, because other people can now sue you for those things.
Sure. Okay. And that's a little bit of a very high level refresher of all of those workshops that we hosted last year about the new auto insurance law, simply stating that lawsuit values in Michigan as of July 2020 have gone up in not only amount, but also in frequency because of that change to the personal injury protection. Correct?
Yep.
Okay. Well, Derek, I'm a pretty normal family, right? Lowly insurance agent, wife, and a couple of kids, but we don't have anything fancy going on. Do I really need an umbrella insurance policy?
No, you don't need one.
Oh,
Uh,
phew.
as long as you're never going to get sued for more than the amount of liability coverage you have on your auto or your homeowner's insurance policies.
Hmm.
The problem is, unless you have a crystal ball, you don't know that. And you can't buy an umbrella policy once a lawsuit has already been filed against you. You have to have it in place before that incident occurs.
Hmm.
So whether it's needed or not, you'll never know until you're at the end of your life and you look back at any lawsuit against you and whether you had enough coverage for that or not.
So
So
I don't know if I need it, but once I need it, it's probably too late.
exactly.
Interesting. Okay. So who should have an umbrella policy? If I'm kind of combing through, what does my family have going on? What do I own? What should be the trigger points in terms of, okay, yeah, this is something that I should be considering?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the big thing about insurance is it's designed to protect our financial security. We want to avoid losing all of our assets and potentially falling into bankruptcy. So somebody that has a nest egg or they have a lot of future earnings through their career, they have a lot to lose. And that type of person is certainly a good candidate for an umbrella policy.
Hmm.
Now, whether it's fair or not, uh, facts will show that lawsuits against people that drive a nice vehicle or have a nice car or have an expensive boat, they settle for more than similar lawsuits when someone was not driving quite as nice of a vehicle or had quite as nice of a house, et cetera, et cetera. So someone that is, financially successful and it shows at least a little bit, they're going to be the target of more lawsuits, and judges in the past have awarded higher dollar values for those resulting lawsuits. So
Sure.
somebody that's got those types of things is certainly interested in an umbrella policy.
Sure.
Also, Brian, as you probably know, dog bites are huge when it comes to homeowners insurance claims. If a dog were to attack someone and God forbid, cause facial scarring to that person, that's going to be an enormous lawsuit. Also, we all know what teen drivers are like. If a teen is driving your vehicle on a regular basis, well, there's a pretty big exposure there. Having an umbrella policy is certainly a good idea because someone that's pretty inexperienced behind the wheel is much more likely to cause a serious car accident than someone that's been driving for 50 years.
Sure. Sure. Now, I know that your base umbrella insurance policy puts $1 million of coverage on the table, right? I've heard that $1 million doesn't go nearly as far as it did 5 or 10 years ago, right? When we all looked at an umbrella policy as something for the rich and famous or the wealthy or the high earning doctors. That's not the case anymore. It's really a very critical and common piece of your average insurance plan these days. How do I know how much coverage I should purchase? What's available out there?
Yeah, well, it's the same as deciding whether you need an umbrella policy or not. You don't know until it's too late, and at that point, you can't buy one. So, there's a number of different options available, anywhere from 1 million up to 10 million, and it's really hard to decide what is the correct amount. If you could foresee the lawsuit that was going to be filed against you, you would know exactly how much to purchase. But in general, somebody that is a higher earner or has a larger nest egg is going to purchase an umbrella policy with more coverage than someone that's a less earner or has a lower sized nest egg because
And And some of that I was going to say, Derek, is probably because of your collectability, right? If that other party knows that I'm earning a fair amount of income, or my spouse is earning a fair amount of income, or I've got a nice nest egg I'm building up, um, they're likely to settle. They're not going to settle for less because they could collect it against me. If I'm earning minimum wage and I don't have any money in my bank account, I haven't accumulated any assets, are they going to get anything out of me? Probably not. That's
That,
probably a consideration that people are keeping in mind as well, right?
that's exactly right. The more assets or earnings someone has, the more likely someone is to pursue them personally in the event that they don't have enough insurance to cover that injured party's lawsuit against them. So
Okay.
you're absolutely right there. Collectability is certainly a concern when it comes to that.
Okay, got it. Now, I've heard that you can often tweak deductibles or other parts of an insurance plan to offset the cost of an umbrella policy. So say I've got a fixed, insurance budget of $4,000 a year, but I feel like I should have an umbrella policy. What is it really so inexpensive that I could tweak some deductibles or make a few adjustments here and there to actually offset the cost of an umbrella policy? Well, what do I expect from a cost standpoint if I add the policy like that?
In a lot of instances, yes. For your standard family with two vehicles and young children, so no teen drivers, they're looking at anywhere between 150 and $200 per year for a $1 million umbrella policy. Someone
Wow.
that's got the motorized toys and the boats and the rental homes and that sort of thing, they're going to pay a little bit more, but it is very, very cost effective to purchase an umbrella policy and protect yourself from those types of lawsuits. So sometimes just increasing your collision deductible from 500 to 1,000 on your vehicles is enough to pay for that umbrella policy. And yeah, you have $500 on the table in the event of a collision claim, but you took $1 million off the table in the event of a lawsuit. That's obviously something that would ruin your life. The $500 probably isn't. So
That's a good trade-off. Okay, awesome. So to kind of summarize the umbrella policy, why should I have one? The big piece, like you mentioned, is the more money on the table, the more likely that other party is to settle for what the insurance is going to pay them, right? And if they settle for 200,000 or 2 million, I don't care so long as they settle for how much my insurance coverage is going to pay. Because that, as long as that happens, I go home and I'm not chipping in out of pocket, right?
exactly.
And I think an important piece to add to that is that it also keeps the insurance company in the game. The more money on the table, the more coverage you have, or the additional umbrella policy puts that much more money on the table for the insurance company. And the insurance company is paying your legal costs. They're paying for the defense costs. They're doing all of that behind the scenes without eating up any of your coverage. So the more money you've got on the table, the more heavily invested the insurance company is in defending that lawsuit and helping get it settled. Finally, often overlooked, but a little bit altruistic, taking care of that other party. We're not out there maliciously driving vehicles or boats or not shoveling the walkway to our home. But if someone else gets hurt or worse, I want that party to be taken care of. I want their family, their spouse, their kids to be taken care of. So sure, I might not be worth that much today, but I've got a decent umbrella policy because if something goes wrong and I'm responsible, I want that other party to be taken care of. That's often overlooked, but I think is really a valid point of the umbrella.
There's a societal benefit to having an umbrella. Absolutely.
Sure. Okay. So hit us with your expert tip, and then we will make our final recommendations and then wrap up, but sticking around for Q&A as needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Expert tip is pretty simple. An umbrella policy is a very cost-effective way to protect yourself from large lawsuits. Anybody with any sort of nest egg and or career ahead of them should certainly consider an umbrella policy. And like Brian mentioned previously, there are some other considerations as well that would also make someone want to purchase an umbrella policy.
Okay.
So I think our overall recommendations for the workshop, number one, if you're in a car accident, especially if it was someone else's fault, get as much information as you can at the scene of the accident. You probably will be able to recover your deductible and or the cost of your repairs against that other driver. With regard to umbrella policies, if you don't already have one, add one. We certainly like to give advice and we don't want to force our insurance beliefs on anybody, but it's something that you should certainly consider and have that conversation with your agent about whether it's appropriate for you or not.
Sure. Great. That's a nice summary, Derek. Well, like we mentioned earlier, we are going to stick around for any Q&A, specific questions, general questions. We are here to chat. We have much of our team on this call also with us. But before we do that, we do want to wrap up in the interest of time for everyone on this call. We do want to thank you for being with us. Thanks for working with us. Thanks for joining us for these workshops and being a part of our agency and a part of our business. We certainly appreciate you, your trust, and everything that we can accomplish together. So thanks for being with us today.